Please welcome Tracy Ryan.
So I had the perfect life. I had it all. I had this wonderful, loving husband who absolutely adored me. I had a booming media agency with over 25 employees in California, another 10 to 12 in New York, and about 15 overseas freelancer, doing really good with her business. I had so many friends and family that loved and supported me, and I just had the most wonderful life. The only thing I was missing was having a child. And I knew that this was one of those things that I just needed to feel complete, and I'd worked so hard to get where I was, and my husband and I thought that, you know what, now's the time. So we tried to get pregnant, and literally happened immediately. It was as if this little girl was just waiting to be born into this world. And on October 3rd, 2012, Sophie Isabella Ryan was born, weighing in at a hefty 9 pounds, 7.4 ounces. She was beautiful, as you can see. She was the picture of health. She ate great, she slept great, she smelled delicious. And I had it all. Everything I'd worked so hard for my whole life was right there in my hands. Until one day, Sophie's left eye began to shake. We had no idea what this was. It was just a little bit at first, and then over the span of a week or two, it started to get worse. And so I was very big into social media, since marketing is one of those things that I did for a living. And I went to one of my mommy groups online. I started asking questions. Have you guys ever seen anything like this before? What could this be? And all of my friends said, you know what? It's probably nothing, but you should probably take her in and have it checked out. So we took her to a pediatrician on Monday. By Tuesday, she was at ophthalmology. By Wednesday of that week, she was seeing a neurologist. And by Friday, she was in an MRI. 8.5 months old, being put under sedation, tube down her throat. And we were honestly more worried about what the sedation was going to do to her than we were about anything being wrong with her, because the doctors and the ophthalmologist and even the pediatrician who checked us in at the MRI told us, listen, for this to be anything at all would be like finding a needle in a haystack. Just relax, don't worry, we're going to take care of her. Everything will be fine. Well, within 48 hours, the phone rang that Sunday. And I noticed that it was from a blocked call, and I was like, why is Kaiser Hospital calling me on a weekend? Because that was the only people that ever called me from a blocked number, and I was pretty confident it was them. And I'll never forget the day Sophie was sitting in her high chair. I was feeding her some organic baby food she had covered in green avocado. My brother and sister were on their way to come and have a beautiful day outside in sunny California with us. And it was Sophie's pediatrician, and he was like, hello, Miss Ryan, how are you? And I was like, I'm good. What's going on? And he said, well, I'm very sorry to tell you this, but what I'm about to say is going to change your and your husband's life forever. And at that moment, my heart sank. And I said, what's wrong? He said, we found something on your daughter's brain scan, and unfortunately, she has a mass. She has a tumor. And he said, I've never, unfortunately, even heard of this tumor. It's so rare. I had to Google search it to find out what it was. And as I sat there and I listened to his words echoing through my head, I thought that I was in a dream, like a really, really, really bad nightmare. And I said to him, stop, wait. Is my child going to die? And he said, well, I've looked into this so that I could answer your questions. And from everything I see, it's a high survival rate. It's a low-grade tumor. It's not one of the more malignant tumors. But there's a very high recurrence rate with these, about an 85% recurrence rate. And I said, well, how do we treat it? What do we do? Can we take it out? He said, unfortunately, these aren't resectable. They're inoperable, because these tumors, they look like spider webs. They're called astrocytomas. They kind of spider web around the optic nerves that come from behind your eyes. And he said, unfortunately, the only option for your child is chemotherapy. And at this point, I'm just crying profusely. My husband's crying. My little girl's sitting there looking at us, not understanding what's happening, because she's this tiny little baby on the floor. And he said, I've got to make an appointment for you to go in and see the oncologist tomorrow, and they will talk to you about next steps. And here I am Within a matter of 5 minutes, going from having this little Brady Bunch family and this beautiful little life and living in the heart of Los Angeles and under the sunshine and the palm trees to my life being turned upside down. So we went to oncology that Monday, and as I sat there and I walked into this room and I saw these sick patients, skin and bones, hair coming out, parents just looking soulless and empty, scared, not knowing if their child was going to make it to the next day, I thought to myself, how did I get here? How is this happening to me? Because as a lot of us, I thought I was invincible. I thought that nothing bad like this could ever happen to me. But I was wrong. And so our journey began. Now, with Sophie's type of brain tumor, there is, with her type of tumor, there are a lot of things that can happen. Child can go blind. They can get hydrocephalus, which is swelling around the brain from water. They can have onset puberty at a very young age. There's all these things that can happen. And what also can happen if a child has what's called neurofibromatosis 1 or NF1 is they can actually go away on their own. And because this takes a genetic test, which takes about 6 weeks to come back, we didn't know if Sophie had NF1. So what most parents decide to do is watch and wait and see if it stays where it is, if it gets bigger, if it gets smaller, if it just starts to dissipate. So we did that. We said, okay, you know what? We're going to watch and wait. We're going to wait 2.5 months because we don't really want to start pumping this poison into our baby quite yet. And we started doing research. We looked at everything we could. Kangen water, IV vitamin C infusions, hyperbaric chamber, mushrooms, diets, Gerson diet, everything that we could imagine. And what was funny about this situation, not really funny, but comical to me because of where I'm standing and who I'm speaking to, is that about 20 people on social media started reaching out to our family and saying, you know what, you should try cannabis oil for your child. And all these people lived overseas in other countries, and we found them through my husband's old roommate who was living in India. And I thought it was the most ridiculous thing I had ever heard. I looked at my husband, I was like, these people must be stoned out of their minds to think that I'm gonna give my little girl a Schedule I narcotic that people use to get stoned. This is a joke. But it wasn't. Unfortunately, during this watching wait period, as you can see on the screen, my daughter had brain surgery. And what happened was, instead of not growing slowly or starting to go away, which is what we'd hoped for, her tumor hit an incredible growth spurt to the point where doctors were afraid that it was a more malignant tumor. And when we discovered that her tumor had hit this growth spurt during this watch and wait period, the doctor called me up and over the phone actually told me that if we do this resection, we take a tiny, tiny little piece, just a little biopsy, can't really remove anything because, again, it's inoperable. But if we take this little piece out and we study it and we look at it and it ends up being more malignant, unfortunately, your daughter's not going to live to see her second birthday. So here I am with this tiny baby who is going to have chemo, and she is now potentially going to die, and we just didn't know what to do. So we said, yes, we'll let you do this surgery, we'll let you take out this piece of tumor, and off we went. Now, during this time, through another chain of events on social media, we got connected with Ricky Lake, who's a celebrity, had a talk show for many, many years, been in films, and her producing partner, Abby Epstein, and they told us about cannabis oil again. And I thought, oh my God, the one thing I didn't look into, the one thing I didn't take seriously, these women who are known for making documentaries to help pregnant women who need to have natural births or want to have natural births with non-medications are now shooting a documentary about using oil for pediatric cancer. And so we started looking into it. They sent us research, they sent us anecdotal stories, and I could not believe that there was science already there over 4 years ago, and nobody was talking about this. We call ourselves pre-Sanjay Gupta because we actually started giving Sophie cannabis oil before he even came out with it about epilepsy. And so we started giving her small doses during this watch and wait period. And when we discovered that she needed to have brain surgery, we titrated her dose up because we knew she was going to have to start chemotherapy. The neurologist, in the meantime, brought us in one day to talk about the surgery, talk about what was going to happen. And he said, oh, by the way, because this tumor has gotten so big and it's wrapped around the nerve so tightly, your daughter's also now going to go blind. Her left eye is unsavable. As a best case scenario, the right eye will have minimal vision, but you need to prepare yourself for full blindness. Blow after blow after blow after blow. I just felt like I was going to crumble inside, but I had hope that this medicine could potentially be the answer. I thought to myself, what are the odds that I'm going to get connected with Ricky Lake? What all had to happen to get me to her? How many people had to be on social media at the right time to share a post, for someone else to find it, to send it to Ricky, and for them to find us? So I prayed, and I prayed, and I prayed. Please, God, save my child, save her vision, and if you do, I'll do anything you ask of me. I will walk the path you lay before me. I will scream it to the rooftops. I will shout this message around the world without fear. So Sophie started chemotherapy, and this is what her tumor looked like right when she started chemo. It got smaller and smaller and smaller. And not only did this tumor shrink that wasn't ever really supposed to shrink in the first place because it's a low-grade glioma, but it shrank so much that we saved her vision. And not only did we save her vision, but these other miracles started happening in our child that no one could explain. Given a 100% chance of going blind, partially at best in the right eye, and this kid had near perfect vision after 13 months. My little girl had to go through 9 blood transfusions during those first 13 months, and 4 months before she got off chemotherapy, she just stopped needing them. Now, this is medically impossible. Once your body is being hit weekly with these toxic chemicals and it's deteriorating the red blood cells, that your bone marrow just can't automatically repair itself. But my daughters did. And her oncologist sat there and looked at me, and they were like, Miss Ryan, I don't know what to tell you. We can't explain this. Unless you're doing something other than the cannabis oil, we really, truly want to tell you, we're going to give this medicine the credit. Chemo also affects the blood counts in patients, the white blood cells, the immune system, not just the red cells, but everything. The goal of chemotherapy isn't just to kill the cancer, but it wipes everything else out in the meantime. So the goal is to kill the cancer before you kill the patient. But 4 months before my daughter got off chemotherapy, that last protocol she went through, her counts stopped going down. They stabilized. There was no up and down from week to week to week. They were good, 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 normal, normal, normal. And I went to my daughter's nurse practitioner who heads up the brain tumor pediatric oncology division. I was like, Nurse Anna, I need you to pull up Sophie's lab results. I need you to look at what's going on in my child's body. Her blood counts have stopped dropping. And she was like, no. That's not possible. They must have lowered the dose. Let me pull the file. And I said, please. I know every single drop of everything that goes into my child, and they didn't lower the dose, so please take a look. And she pulled up her chart, and she kind of stepped back, and she goes, you're right. This is miraculous. My child was the only child in the hospital that we knew of that didn't have to go in and get her labs done when she got a 2-week chemo break in between every 4-week infusion because she was so healthy. Sophie was also hospitalized only once for neutropenia, which is when all your immune system, your white blood cells, get wiped out. And her counts were down at around 300, which is very low, and we're staying there for a couple of days. And she wasn't sick. Nothing was wrong with her. Just all of a sudden spiked a fever. We had to take her in, and they said she was neutropenic. Got her out of the hospital after a couple of days, and within 3 days' time, her counts had shot up to normal. And I said, Doc, look, she's fine again. Oh, well, she must have had a cold because your body doesn't recover this quickly from a neutropenic situation due to chemotherapy. This couldn't have been the medicine. I was like, come on, Doc. She didn't have a runny nose. She's not sneezing. She doesn't have symptoms. She doesn't have a cold. She had a cold 2.5 weeks ago, but she's long been over that. Well, this couldn't have recovered if it was due to chemotherapy. And now this is just a few examples. I could sit up here all day and tell you about the miraculous things that happened within my child. This is what Sophie looked like at 1 year old, 2 years old, 3 years old, 4 years old. This is what a cancer patient on cannabis oil looks like. This is what every cancer patient should look like. This is what CanaKids cancer patients look like. Happy, healthy, hair, weight, smiling, living, being a child. This medicine gives these children their lives back. So after I'd gone through this, partially through this journey with my daughter, and I saw what was happening, and I'd made this promise, remember? I said, you help me save my child, and I will spread this message across the land without fear. And despite how many people said, Tracy, do not start a company called CanaKids. Do not go public with treating pediatric patients. They will take your child away. They will put you in jail. You'll get in trouble. I didn't listen. I made a promise. And so CanaKids was born. I had a secret that I couldn't keep. I could not let another family go through what my family almost went through. I couldn't watch the suffering continue. I knew that I had something beautiful here, something that I needed to share. And I knew it could help. So I basically started shutting down my other agency. I started transferring my staff members from one job to another, and slowly as one company was closed, another one was born. CanaKids uses medical professionals to do our dosing. We use PhD scientists to formulate our medicines. We use terpenes and terpene profiles that are specific for indications because there's enough information out there to help guide us on how to treat cancer, autism, epilepsy, pain, sleep. It's not perfect, but we know that there are certain qualities of this plant that do certain things that make certain issues go away, or at least get better. We've worked with patients who have cancer, autism, epilepsy, Crohn's disease, fibromyalgia, severe pain, sleeplessness, multiple sclerosis, Alzheimer's. War vets are dying at 50 a day. And that's just what's reported. We've gotten some of these vets off of 26 medications. Crohn's patients who can't eat, who are skin and bones, who are suffering from pain. We've been able to alleviate that pain and help them get weight back on. I want to tell you about a few of our patients, our rock stars, I call them, our featured CanaKids. AJ was actually one of the very first children we treated. And this young man came in with his mother one day, 16 years old, very tall, very thin, in a neck brace. His mom, hollowed eyes. I mean, this woman looked like her soul had been ripped out of her chest. And she looked at me and she said, Miss Ryan, my son is dying and you're my last hope. They've told me to plan his funeral and I don't know what else to do. He had 22 tumors in his bones and lungs, osteosarcoma. His bones were breaking. He'd had to have so many surgeries that at one point they had to build a cage around him to hold him in place. Nonstop fevers, vomiting to the extent that he couldn't even get his end-of-life chemo, called gemcitabine, to help him with pain. He couldn't even take it. He was on opioids at 16 years old, taking Oxy, one of the most addictive opioids there is, if not the most. This young man was consuming this every day just to get out of bed. And CanaKids was new. I didn't know what was going to happen, but I gave her a hug and I said, I will help you I will do everything I can for your child. I will fight with you till the end. Let's get him on some medicine. Let's get him some dosing guidance from one of our experts that understand both Western medicine and cannabinoid therapy, and let's see what we can do. This is a quote from AJ's mom, and I love to read a parent's words because to me, it means so much more. Since AJ has been on cannabis, he no longer takes any type of pain medication. He no longer has fevers, and he is able to get his chemo treatments. Since being on cannabis, he is no longer getting sick, nauseous, or bedridden from chemo, and he is now cancer-free. Before this young man hit his death date, his cancer was gone, eradicated from his body. And not only that, but within 2 weeks of starting this medicine, he was off of every single opioid he was consuming, and his pain was gone. This young man is graduating from high school this year with his own graduating class because cannabis oil helped to save his life. His oncologist has called me multiple times, and she calls me just to remind me how shocked she still is and how she still can't believe that this young man has survived, and sends me patients on a regular basis. This is the story of Max. How cute is this little guy? Autism, OCD, manic, possible bipolar, episodic mood disorder, severe angers and rages, and was even put on a 5150 hold into a psych room. This little boy, he was on 7 different pharmaceuticals. His parents had almost given up. They had no idea what they were going to do. Strangely enough, his mother had been following Prayers for Sophie, my daughter's Facebook page, since the very beginning. And she knew we had used cannabis, but she thought to herself, I really want to give the Western medicine a chance because maybe there's something out there that can help him. And nothing did. Until one day when one of her best friends saw me speak in San Diego, and she rushed home to call her friend, and she said, Kathy, you've got to call this woman. You've got to see if she can help little Max. It's a quote from Max's mom. During a violent outburst, Max put his hand through a window and got 30 stitches. Max began taking cannabis oil and has had no violence since. He is now off of all of his pharmaceuticals and is thriving. He is smiling and has a new sparkle in his eye. And now I have my son back. Cannabis oil alone has helped this young man be a child when he was otherwise just engulfed in rage and anger and hate and violence. A little boy who was so upset and his brain was on so much fire that he put his arm through a plate glass window and it cut him all the way up. This medicine can change the world and is changing the world. So what's next? Now what? We've got this wonderful little girl, Sophie, my daughter, who's done so amazing on cannabis. We've got all these patients, hundreds of them, that we've been able to help. We've been able to help them get off their opioids. We've been able to help get rid of their diseases, their seizures, their anger issues, their pain, their anxiety. So where do we go from here? It's time to do the research, you guys. We have to do research. We have to get to the bottom of why this is working. We all know we have an endocannabinoid system, but we don't know enough about it. We all know there's hundreds and hundreds of different strains of cannabis oil, but we don't really understand what it all does. So my new entity, which is a for-profit entity called CK Sciences, has partnered with Professor Deddy Meyer, who many of you may have seen speak today, and the Technion Institute, where they can legally study this medicine. Deddy and his team of scientists have the most sophisticated lab in the world, as far as we know. And they're the only people that we're aware of that can look at every single cannabinoid, all 144 in a plant, in the cannabis plant. They can look at all the terpenoids and flavonoids, and they can sequence them to see what's the difference between this strain and this strain. Because you see, if you have one grower that grows Girl Scout cookies and you have another grower who takes the same seeds and grows the same Girl Scout cookies, there's going to be differences because the sunlight over here is going to be different than the sunlight over there. The soil here could be different than the soil there. One difference in a drop of water could change how the chemical makeup of the plant is growing, just as this one over here can change. So they're looking at all of the different compounds of the plant. They're also looking at autism, epilepsy, cancer, pain. They're doing all of these incredible, I think there's like 15 clinical trials going on right now that the Technion's a part of. And we have granted them funding for their next 4 years of cancer research. My daughter being a cancer patient, that's where my heart is, and that's where I want to go first. So they're helping us figure this out. The discoveries that these guys are making in this lab are mind-blowing. What they're seeing in their well plate trials and their preclinical mice is absolutely revolutionary. So our goal now is to take these formulations and bring them to humans and see if we can replicate in an adult and a child what we're seeing in a mouse model. Working towards a solution and not just saying, oh, well, it's Girl Scout cookies, so just take Girl Scout cookies. It doesn't work that way. Girl Scout cookies is a name that could represent a myriad of different compounds and different levels and what a strain ends up being once it's harvested and turned into an oil. And we want to get to the bottom of it. And there are ways to standardize this plant. What they're finding in Israel is that it's not all potentially, let's say one plant has 30 cannabinoids and has X number of terpenoids and flavonoids. It's not the whole plant that's doing it, but a combination. And some of these combinations are as small as 15. So through a fractionation technology, you can break that plant apart and reassemble it and work towards standardizing a medicine that can treat a patient effectively, dose after dose after dose, oil run after oil run, harvest after harvest. What we're doing now in California and in the United States is we're planning human trials. We believe we're about 2 to 4 months away from getting our manufacturing license under the DEA. And we have 2 signed MOUs with one of the top 5 pediatric hospitals in the country to look at over 1,000 children for 7 different indications, 6 of which are in the pain family and in autism. We want to use this pain as an entry point, the low-hanging fruit. It's easier to get into a pain study than just a full-blown cancer study. So we're going to start with end-of-life pain. These are the kids that need us the most. And as an adjunct to chemotherapy. And once we show low toxicity and efficacy, which we know we will because we're doing it every day in our patients, we're going to use those successes to branch out and work towards trialing as many patients as we can with as many diseases as we can. We know that we have the intellects and the technology and the love behind this plant to get there. We've been working so hard, so tirelessly to find the best of the best, to come together, people who care about lives, not people who want to make money. Money's never been first for us. I want to make a lot of money so I can give a lot of it away. I think that would be the most rewarding life I could possibly live, to have millions of dollars in the bank and be able to give that to those in need. Help families like mine who almost lost their home multiple times. I almost had to file bankruptcy. I didn't know on many occasions how I was going to make my rent because we don't get a lot of help financially in the United States. I'm a middle-income family. Nobody wants to give money to a middle-income family. There was many times where my daughter needed medicine and I needed to give her medicine and eat a little bit less so she could have a little bit more. That's not right. There's so many people suffering. There's so many people out there that need us to come together as a community. Whether it's $5 that you can give to a charity or to a cannabis company that's focused on pharmaceuticals, or if it's $5 million. Whether it's your voice that you can lend to help push this movement forward, to help raise the awareness so that more people know about these stories, more people know about Max, more people know about AJ, more people know about Sophie. Whatever it is you can do, get involved. Do your part. You're all here for a reason. You all came to hear me talk today for a reason, because you care. Whether it's a small effort or a large one. It's time to end the suffering. Will you join me? My name is TRACY Ryan, and I'd love to take any questions the audience has. Thank you.
Is the company that you're working with, DD, is it going to be public?
We are not planning on going public currently. I'm planning to stay private for as long as I can. There's a lot of issues and regulations, and it's much harder to run a public company and deal with the ups and downs of the stocks. I'm doing a lot of fundraising currently. We've already gotten the first small round in, and I'm speaking with many investors that are really passionate about helping us move this forward. I've got a goal of raising about $10 million on the first round with a goal of up to $100 million over the next 5 years. We don't want to go small, we want to go very big. And with the studies that we're going to be doing, we're spending at least an extra $500,000 just to look at metabolization, concentration of both pharmaceuticals and cannabinoids in the bloodstream, because personalized medicine is really what I care most about. We have the technology. We have the understanding of how to get there and how to do it, but hospitals aren't really implementing it in the United States. So with that being said, the right partner, everything is negotiable, but currently we plan on staying private. Anyone else?
Hi, Tracy. Thanks for sharing your story, and so glad to hear that Sophie's doing well.
Thank you.
Question, you're talking about the Girl Scout cookies as the example, and so for some context, my mom has cancer, and we've looked at Rick Simpson oil and that kind of thing many times, and it's a very challenging thing to research, I think very much for that reason. So how are you reconciling that today? You're talking about this research needing to be done, but you're also providing this medicine today.
Sure.
So if you could speak to that.
Absolutely. So we know that there are terpenes that are chemotherapeutic and anti-tumoral, for example. And we have a lot of anecdotal evidence with canakids. Like I said, we've treated hundreds and hundreds of patients. So we have tracked each one of those patients from the very first patient we ever received. We do a full medical intake. We look at mutations in their diseases. We look at side effects, pharmaceuticals, what is it that's ailing them, and who are they as an individual? And we're looking at how our different medicines and how our different profiles are working with those specific diseases. And through that, and through anecdotal evidence that we have from the people who came before us, we're working on, what we've done is we've created a formulation that we believe have a lot of ingredients that can be beneficial in a patient with cancer. Like I said, anti-tumoral terpenes, chemotherapeutic, appetite stimulating, and anti-anxiety are some of the big ones. We have Dr. Bonnie Goldstein, who we've worked closely with, who is a world-renowned pediatrician that lives in California, who has been doing research and studying this plant for a very long time, alongside Dr. Jeffrey Raybar, who is one of the foremost terpene formulators in the country, in our country, if not the world. And using these people's knowledge and using our anecdotal information, their anecdotal information, the science that we're provided, that's how we've drilled down to the formulations that we have currently while we're waiting on Dedi's research to be finalized. We also have to look at dosing and what ratios and how much CBD, how much THC, and can THCA be a benefit? We have found THCA to be very, very powerful, and I don't think people talk about THC enough. And for anyone who doesn't know what that is, it's an acid. It's like juicing the plant. It's the plant before you've added heat to it. So how we formulate this product is we take organic flour, pesticide-free, mold-free, and we soak it in an organic olive oil bath, and we heat it at 140 degrees for 3 hours. And then we strain off the flour content, and we're left with an oil that's rich with cannabinoids, terpenoids, and flavonoids. And we find that that's working very, very well with our cancer patients. It's what we use for autism as a first line of defense versus CBD. CBD can be very irritating because it's a lot of CBDs are more sativa. And we also look at indicas. I mean, honestly, for our patients, we use almost all indicas. We have found that they are very therapeutic when it comes to treating these more serious diseases. And then it's all about using a practitioner that actually understands Western medicine and how it's processing through the body and what liver enzymes is it going through. If it's going through the cytochrome P450, then you want to make sure that you're dosing that cannabis oil away from that pharmaceutical so there's not pharmaceutical toxicity where the pharmaceuticals are backing up into the bloodstream, and that it's also not counteracting what the pharmaceutical is trying to do. So it's really this combination of things that we're doing to try and treat our patients most effectively. You don't have to use our oils to work with our practitioners. You can go to www.cannakids.org. There's a pop-up that comes from the bottom of the page. As long as you can get access to oils that are lab tested, our practitioners can help guide you in what formulation to look for, and then how to dose that. Our goal is to not get our patients high. Also, I'd like to add that, especially since we work with children. We start at anywhere from 2.5 milligrams to a 5 milligram dose. The body naturally builds up a tolerance to the high every few days, and then you can titrate up to the next dose and keep titrating up until we feel you've reached a therapeutic dose. And for cancer, it's all about monitoring the scans and also about monitoring how the patient feels. And we really use this kind of combination of efforts, research, and just understanding based on what we're seeing in our patients today to help guide those treatment plans.
How are you dealing with, and you talked about it very quickly and briefly, about that social stigma of giving children cannabis oil, and how you dealt with what would be the police state around giving children cannabis oil, and what you tell parents to do when introducing that also at the pediatrician level. A lot of doctors will say, no, don't know it, walk away.
Right. You know, I get this question a lot, and you would think that I'd have a lot of haters. You'd think I'd get a lot of backlash, and people would be like, how in God's name are you getting away with this, and why are you doing it? My daughter now has over 45,000 followers on her Facebook page, and she has close to 17,000 followers on Instagram, and I can count all of the negative comments I've had on one hand. The education is getting there. And if you look at polling in America, 95% of Americans are for medical legalization. So whereas I hid in the shadows 4 years ago for quite some time until my doctors are like, okay, we can't explain this. We now believe it's the cannabis oil shrinking your daughter's tumor that's helping the chemo. It's changed now. And by the time patients get to us, in a lot of situations, they're already so fed up with pharmaceuticals and they're so over what's happening to their kid, they just want to find some relief. We have been very meticulous at also providing a lot of information on our websites. If you go to cannakids.org, we have an FAQ section that's a lot of frequently asked questions that are all written in one section. In another section, we have 23 viral videos that I've produced that answer a lot of those common questions that people have about cannabis oil. On the flip side of that, on savingsophie.org, we have 8 different categories that cover a myriad of different topics about helping a cancer patient along, all the things that we use to save Sophie: diet, nutrition, holistic approaches, non-carcinogenic products for the home, fundraising, advice, et cetera, et cetera. But my favorite section is the cannabis studies section. And in that section, we have about 100 or more articles that have been summarized and shortened for easy consumption. Because when you have a sick person in your life, the last thing you want to be doing is reading all day long. And then we have a link to the full article. And there's a lot of scientific published studies in that section. So if anybody comes to me and says, you know, I don't know about this, I'm afraid. What's it going to do to my child's brain development? What's it going to do to them socially? I point them to that section. And then I also remind them, especially if it's a cancer mom or dad, that they're pumping chemotherapy into their child. You put 1 drop on your skin and it eats all the way to the bone. It's so toxic. The only reason it doesn't eat us from the inside out is because our veins are lined with a special coating that protect our bodies and that holds that medicine within the veins so it doesn't leak out and get into our system and burn us up from the inside. And I remind them that they're also okay with radiation. And radiation alone can not only cause severe damage to healthy tissue, but it can also cause more cancers later in life, leukemia being a big one. And then don't even get me started on the opioids. Let me remind them of the opioids that they're okay taking as long as a doctor has given them a prescription. Opioids are killing people in double numbers compared to last year in the United States. We have states of emergency happening in some of our states in the US. So many people are overdosing on this medication, being so addicted to it that they're having to use methadone to get off, and then they can't get off the methadone. They call it handcuffs because they can't get off. And I remind them that not only do we have this endocannabinoid system where our bodies are hardwired to receive this medicine, but a mother's own breast milk has cannabinoids in it that identically match phytocannabinoids in the cannabis plant. That milk is used to sustain our lives when we're born into this world. This is a plant that grows from the ground. It's something that God gave us. And I truly believe that there are plants that can help us eradicate all diseases. If you look at vinblastine is one of them. It comes from the vinca plant. Vinblastine is a chemotherapy that's used to treat cancer. So remind them of all these things that they're okay with because they get a prescription for it. So they need to not fear something that right now they can't. That's so much safer. It's even less addictive than alcohol and caffeine. And that's how I do it.
Thank you for joining us. That was wonderful to hear your story. Our family has a similar experience. And I was just related to her question, but the proposed bill in Canada is 14-year jail term for providing cannabis to a minor. I'm just considering what are your thoughts on that? Because as a family, I know we snuck it around, we stored it in other houses. We were really scared, right? And especially when we started to see a recovery.
Yeah.
We come from a small community. Everybody fundraised and was behind the family when he was diagnosed, and then all of a sudden it's like, that kid had a remarkable recovery. Like, what's going on? Is it a scam? You know, there's a lot of stuff, and we were really scared as a family of what the repercussions would be. And now with the new bill, it is 14 years.
And your child had cancer?
Yep.
And your child's okay?
2 years old when he started. He's 6 today, and if he ran through this room, people would never believe it.
Same with my daughter.
And you know, you're showing those pictures, and we have it. We call it the skull face, because when they're going through chemo and radiation, when they're so young, they lose all their body mass, and their eyes are sunk, and their
cheeks, and
they're not even the right color. It's green, gray.
Yeah.
It's so horrible. And now he's the life of the
healthy.
party. We laugh, like we say if there's any side effects, his personality has just exploded.
Oh,
So
my kid, I normally bring Sophie with me, but I had a lot of talks while I was here in media appearances. Normally she comes on stage with me. She's actually 4.5 years old, sat in my lap during a 45-minute panel the other day. I got to tell this story because it's super cute, and then I'll answer your question. And she's sitting there, and we're doing our wrap up, and I'm, finishing up. I'm handing it to my friend Angela, who's also in the documentary with us. And Sophie says goodbye, and I go to hand the microphone away. She goes, "No, Mommy, I'm not done." And she grabs the microphone back and yanks it in. She goes, "I have a doctor's appointment this week. Will everybody pray for me?" And it was her MRI. It was the most adorable thing. And she also loves going to the hospital. She loves it. It doesn't matter that she's had hundreds of needle sticks into her portacat to the point that she's got scarring all in that area, little dotted area. You probably know. She runs through the halls. She hugs the doctors and nurses. She puts her chest out when it's time for the needle to go in. And I also believe that it has helped block all of her bad memories and keep any nightmares from coming on, because many of these children who are sick that have the skull face like you're talking about, they're shy, they're recoiled, they're scared. They're not outgoing at all. They don't know how to make friends. Oh, my kid would be in here running this room, giving hugs and kisses to everyone. And to hear that that's the case, it breaks my heart, and it's criminal, in my opinion. It's absolutely criminal. And that's, again, why it's so very important to do this research. It's important for us to have a standardized medicine and scientific evidence so that we can take it to our politicians, because it's time for those politicians to stop making medical decisions for our family. They're not doctors. They did not go to med school. They don't have the right. If anybody does a Google search and they look as to why this plant was made criminal in the first place. It was all bullshit, pardon my French. It was all politics and power-hungry a-holes that were just trying to build themselves up into a platform so that they could have something to get behind. It was all propaganda. There was no medical reason why this stigma ever happened in the first place. I mean, look at Jeff Sessions in the United States. You guys think you have it bad. I mean, that's pretty bad. They're not trying to put parents in jail, but Jeff Sessions, our Attorney General in the United States, is making statements that good people don't smoke cannabis. I say my prayers every night. I'm a Christian. I pay my taxes. I'm good to others. I help people who are sick. You're going to call me a bad person because I like to consume a plant that grows from the ground that was put on this earth long before we all got here? I mean, there are depictions of, mosaics that date back thousands and thousands of years ago where they're using this plant to heal people. There have been tombs uncovered with Egyptians, one of which the woman had breast cancer, and they found cannabis in there with her because she was using it as a medicine. And for these politicians to be telling us we can't use this to heal ourselves, when if you watch TV, if you read the news, there's stories everywhere. It doesn't make sense to me. They're doing it out of fear. And that's why, again, I've asked everybody in this room to help me in this. It has to stop. And I'm really sorry that you had to live in such fear. No parent should have to go through that. Every parent should be able to help your child. And congratulations on getting away with it. And that is my time. Again, thank you guys for coming. Thank you to O'Cannabis. It has been wonderful being here in your country. And I wish you all well.